I got a better chance. They offer me way more in scholarships here.
I'm paying more for a master's than I did for the undergrad right now. I'm
That
still like in
sucks.
state for the masters.
Sorry?
I'm still in state for the masters, so it's not that bad. It's like 7K semester or something. But you get like all your money back if you TA. Someone was telling me that. Mark was telling me that, I think.
Hot, 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 hot. Okay. Zizoncio. So I want want to convince you that Davenport-Schinzel sequences will somehow pops up when we are talking about arrangements of a line, and we look at one particular line, L over here, and we want to ask at each moment what this line sees just above the line. Essentially, I want to ask for this line L, what do you see both above and below? So we just double it by 2. And I want to say, as I'm walking around L, I'll check out at each face that I'm penetrating into what are the lines that I see if I'm going along the face. And let's remind everybody, what is one of the applications of the zone theorem? I'd like to say that if I have already an arrangement of several lines, I have already the arrangement of the line L1 up to Ln minus 1. And now I want an algorithm that, and for this arrangement, I know for every line what are all the vertices along the line with each other intersect and at which order. I know what the faces, I know what the edges, everything is known about this arrangement. And at this moment, I'm inserting one new line, L, this line that probably I should have done in red for consistency, but I didn't. So here is L that is just entered. And somehow I found the first face, F1, that the line sees, and I'm walking along the edges of this face just to find where do I find the edge of the arrangement via which L exits the first face, F1. And of course, that would be the entry point into another face, F2. And now I'll very linearly walk across the edges of F2, see all the vertices in this face. It sounds like it's convex. You must have be able to do it faster. Possibly, but I don't. And actually, I cannot, because I'm doing it in optimal time. So I'll find, by checking each edge of this face, what is the exit point, which will be the entry point into F3. And that's how I add Ln, and then I'll move to adding Ln plus 1, Ln plus 2, etc. So that would be the application of this arrangement. And up to constants, it will be optimal because I have n square vertices, and I'm going to build all of it in n square vertices. So if there is a save up over here, if I'm suboptimal, it's only in the constants that I'm doing. But it will not be a factor of order of magnitude, function of n, if I'm spending more, which is n square, and the complexity of the arrangement just to store all the vertices is already n square. So that's an application of the zone theorem. That is, where do I save things? What should I, what are the pieces of the arrangement that I don't check? Are, of course, faces that are not adjacent, that don't intersect with this new line, L. Then in my search of entering one line L, I will not check all the faces out there, only the faces that L stabs. But for each such face, I'm checking everything around this face. So here is L. For conveniency, L will be horizontal. I'll walk on L from left to right. And every time that I'm entering a face, I'm writing who are the lines that consist of this face. And I want to convince you that it will be a Davenport-Schinzel sequence, which reminds you that it's C, D, maybe A again. But if I have A and B and A, I cannot have B now again. because that will mean too many alternations. And to make it cleaner, I will even replace every line Li by two sides of the line. The upper side, which I'll denote Li upper, for example, L1 upper side, the one that you see, or L1 lower side. For L itself, it only see, of course, the lower side of L1, but see now in a moment what happens. So I'm coming from here. Now I see L6, but the upper part of, so I'll start from here. Now I'll see the lower side of L6, from which I'll move into another anonymous line, L10, the lower part of L10. Now I'll see L1, the lower part of L1, see L4, the lower side. Notice that you need the both sides of the line, because shortly you'll see the other side of L4. So that's why I multiply it. Multiply by 2, right? Instead of one line, it will have two half sides of the line. So L1, the lower side, 4, the lower side, L9, hard to see, but it's the upper side. Immediately after seeing the upper side, the left side, I'll see L9 again. Now it will be the lower side. Here I see L4 once again. Remember, I've seen L4 before. But I've seen L4 here, now I see L4 again, seeing the lower side of the upper side of L7, lower side of L7, L4 yet again. And now I start visiting this face. Okay. And now I'm arguing that that's a DS sequence. I will not have AB and AB. First, I will not have the same symbol that appeared twice without any separation, because it's just one edge. Why would I count an edge, a single edge, twice? There must be something that separates. So I don't have A immediately after A. And secondly, notice that as I see L1 in this case, I saw L1 lower side at some point over here. And then I stopped seeing it, and I stopped seeing it because somebody now, I'm walking on the lower side, I used to watch L1, not necessarily above me, but I see it and it's clear in which direction I'm progressing. And now I stop seeing it because, hey, L4 just occludes L1 from me. So I might see a bunch of other lines, but I cannot see L4, L1, this guy. I'm walking down here. I will not see from once I stop, I passed this vertex, I will not see L1 again. There is L9 that separates, L4 that separates, but until, as long as I did L4, I didn't pass the upper side of L4, L4 will keep occluding L1 from where I am. I must pass this point, and what happened after this point? I have no chance to see the lower side of L4 again. I moved from the lower side to the upper side, and then I'm not going to ever see it again. So if I had A, B, what are A? A was L1, B was L4, and then I'll see L1 again, but I will not see L4, the lower side of L4, once again. So I have a Davenport Schinzel that consists of 2n symbols, because every line has two sides, and it's actually n minus 1, because it's a number of lines. Ignore some annoying constants. It will be about 4n from the upper side, and the same number below L. too tedious? Or it's fine? People feel more or less okay? As long as, why did I stop seeing L1? L4 now occludes. Is there any chance to see L1s once again? Yes, but then but before it, you have to get rid of the one that just occludes L1 from you. And as long as this guy exists, you might see a lot of other lines, but you will not see L1 unless L4 is out of the game. And that's the whole proof. And that explains that we can build the whole arrangement in theta of n squared. Why theta of n squared? It's order of n squared. That's what the algorithm gives. Every new line, it just takes n time to do it. Notice it's not a line trip. It's not a line trip algorithm. Line trip will take n squared log n. We want to get rid of the log n, do the incremental insertion. And every new line that I'm adding implies walk over all the faces that this new line adds, but the total complexity is only linear, so every new line takes order I for the ith line, summation summed up to order of n squared. And why is this tight? Why is this omega of n squared? Because that's a number of faces, edges, vertices in every arrangement of n lines in general position. Of course, if the lines are parallel to each other, then I didn't say anything. Make sense? So that's a zone theorem. Just nice, elegant. It just saved one log. But it has lots of application. Yeah, we just went through the algorithm. We start tracing L by placing a point on it way, way to the left. If I'm all the way to the left, way, way in minus infinity, I'll spend linear time to find where is this line. Who cares? Among all the faces. But I don't have any intersection points where I'm all the way to the left. So we'll find the first face, the unbounded face, where L starts. And now for every edge of an F1, check if this edge intersects L. If yes, we found where L exits F1. And because it's DCL, doubly connected edge list, every half edge know what is a face. On the other side of this half edge, you know what is a face, F2, that this line enters, and now walk along this edge, along this face, sorry, until you find where L exit F2. And keep doing it from face to face until you find the unbounded face where L is done with the arrangement. So, or linear time per line, n squared for the whole thing. Applications. Find the heaviest point, not you. Okay, ready? Look. Find the point that is the heaviest one. The point that is covered by, I give you n strips. Tell me what is a point that's covered by the maximum number of strips. Somebody else.
Is this the same as the triangle intersection problem from homework 4?
Yeah, except that now at this case, when I had the triangles, I had a log of doing, say, the line strip or walking. I need to find all the intersection points in the order that they appear. And way walking along the boundary of exit strip. So I just need to keep a counter. So all that I saved is a need to sort the lines. I saved the logs of the sorting over there. Okay, so the time will be n squared. Set of segments, find the lines that cross as many as possible.
You dualize all the segments, and then it's the previous problem that we had.
Almost. It's not exactly the same problem. If I want the same problem, then the segments needs to be, let's go back one slide. Segments needs to be to create this shape. Segments needs to be vertical because if I dualize a vertical segment, then this point will dualize to a line, this point will dualize to a line, but these two lines have the same slope. So to create this shape, I need to have segments of arbitrary orientation, which will correspond to double wedge. So now I want to ask, in this world of double wedges, what is the point of the maximum depth? So it's dualizing, except that instead of infinite parallel strips, I have this double wedge. Remember, if I want a line L that intersect a non-vertical segment S, what's a dual? It's a point L star that is inside these two, inside the double wedge, because a line can have either P1 below it and P2 above it, or the lines can have a P, bad picture. Here is my segment, and my can has either this point below, this point above, or the opposite, this point above, this point below.
Can we still do a line sweep?
But we can do, sorry?
Polar coordinate lines.
So,
Not the second one. Do we still
yeah, but so, yeah, but that would be n square log n. It actually goes the opposite way. If I want to build a visibility graph, but that requires a bit more trickiness, if I want to build the visibility graph, remember from last meeting, I need to do the circular arc. So actually I can use dualized all these endpoints, and then with a bit more trickiness, I can build the visibility graph in only linear time instead of n square, in n square time instead of n square log n. Because yes, but I want to know for every endpoint, to build the visibility graph, I want to know for every endpoint what other endpoints do I see and what is the order between them. So in the dual world, it would be go on the line which is dual to this endpoint and ask at which order do you meet these other points. There is a bit technicality that the circular order is circular order along a line, while I need circular order around array. So out of the points, once it's sorted, I can easily make it as if it's circular order around the point. So yes, visibility graph you can also build in n square time. So yeah, it's cute. Next topic. So we saw a collection of trees that I argue that are really, really useful for many applications. Art trees, quad trees, KD trees. You'll find many packages. You'll find many applications in other domains of research. Really popular. Now I want to show you also a few trees that are less common in practice, but are very convincing theoretically. And then I'll tell you that, unfortunately, if you want this time per query, that's as much other resources that you need to waste. But first, here is a meta problem to motivate our whole discussion. I have a planar map, and the user gave me a query window, query rectangle, and I want to ask who are the countries that intersect this query rectangle. And I want optimal answer. I don't care how many countries there are in the map. I don't care about n at all. I want an answer that if there are k countries that intersect the query window, it will take about order k just to report all these countries, and maybe another log n or something close to log n because, hey, life, there is still, as long as it's only logarithmic, it's fine. So that would be a motivation problem. Okay. So quad trees, KD trees, etc., are still very useful for it, but the best we can say then theoretically about the query time was something like square root n. And I want to do better. Okay. So as a motivation, let's talk about range searching in 1D. So I have a set of points all on the x-axis. All my points are on the x-axis. And I will give you a query range. I give you some number, mu and mu prime, the cutest letter in the Greek alphabet, undoubtedly, mu and mu prime. And I want to know who are all the points that are between mu and mu prime. And the running time that I ask that you'll do it is log n, because log n is always there. Every search will take log n. You can prove it, actually. Plus, if k is the number of points out there, then k is the time to print it. You have to time just to constant per each point in the range. So let's do the find of mu. From the root, there is a path that tells you go all the way down to mu. There is, now let's do find of mu prime, and there is a path that takes you all the way to mu prime. And I want you to notice that there is some split point between these two paths. The split point might be the root itself, that from the root to mu prime, I branched left and right. Maybe it's below the root somewhere. And so here is mu prime, the root, that W is a split point, actually the value, it's a split point. And let's pick one of these leaves that will be a leaf somewhere here. Let's call it X. And I also want Z. I have Z. Maybe I also want t right here. And I want you to notice that what is a relationship between x and mu? So when I go to mu, I'm doing it even though it's so obvious. When I'm going to mu, I went left of w, of the split point, went left over here into mu, while to reach to x, from t, I branched right. So mu, in turn, is smaller, let's assume all values are different, smaller than t, which is in turn smaller than x. So all these guys in this subtree are all smaller than x. Are all smaller than all these guys in this subtree, everybody in this subtree is larger than mu. On the other hand, to get to mu prime, I have to branch right in w, while to reach to x, I have to branch left at the split point, in this case. In my drawing, it's just one case. But in this drawing, I branched left to reach to x. I branch right to reach mu prime. So mu prime is larger than w, once again, the branch point, which is in turn larger than x. Conclusion, these subtree are all in range. That is, between mu prime, smaller or equal than mu prime, larger or equal than mu. This subtree, every such sub. So once again, where do you see these trees? After the split point, below the split point, all the right subtrees on the path that leads from the split point down to mu, all these subtrees are in my range, are between mu and mu prime. Once you see such a subtree, you don't need even to check each element individually. You know that you are below the branch, all good. You are below the branch, and you are a right subtree, well, to mu prime, you branched left. The same argument will say here below the split point, I branched left to reach to this or this or this subtrees. Subtrees that are hanged over here, some x prime, over here. So they're also in range. So all these subtrees are all in range. So you basically get the algorithms that in log n plus k can tell you where do you have interesting things, where do you have relevant subtrees. So just the same picture, much more detailed. Start from the root, your path divided into pi 0, and after the split pi 1, pi 2, all the left subtrees that are to the left of pi 1, and all the right subtrees, which are to the right of pi 2, they are all inside the range. And we will think about them as canonical subsets, which is a term that I'll use quite a few times today. And it takes time until you understand by examples what do I mean by canonical subsets. But think about it. If I have some other data structure, and I can tell the data structure wants points between mu and mu prime, and I can just tell this other oracle, other process. Here is the root of a subtree, and I'll tell you that every subtree is range. You don't need to do anything active about the subtree. Are all in range. Then to this, how many bytes do I need to communicate? I need to communicate just 2 times log n canonical subsets, just of the subtrees the roots of all the subtrees that are in range, there are at most, if the height of the tree is log n, then there will be at most log n subtrees hanged on pi 1, at most log n subtrees hanged on pi 2. So for some reasons that we'll see shortly, it will be important. But at the meantime, all I need to do now is, after finding all these subtrees, print each one individually, all the elements inside. So the 1D problem is not too interesting, but, and here is the solution. Okay, so constructing binary search tree is n log n. You need to sort the points. Query time can be answered, of course, in theta of n in the worst case, but generally, if I have k points in the range, then I can print all of them in log n plus k. And if I only want to count all these points, what should I do? Going back one slide, if I just want a count, then as long as every such subtree, we have seen this trick many times, every such subtree knows how many points there are in its own subtree, sum up all these numbers, and voila, you're done. So it's only in log n time you can tell me how many points do I have in range. That's, by the way, if I cared only for points that are on the leaf. There might be, if you are storing roots in the whole tree, then there might be other guys that are on the path to mu, but that are in the range. But let's think about this subtree. I have a value x over here, and all the guys x double prime over here. All the guys in x double prime, they are all the guys, sorry, in this subtree, they are all greater. Well, they're all smaller than x double prime, while mu is smaller than x double prime. Guys in this subtree, not relevant for us. And actually, I was lying. Guys on the root itself are not relevant for us either. So take it back. Only below the split points. It's in the range. Take it back. Okay. So there are only order log n canonical subsets. And canonical subsets, at the moment, will just be a root of a subtree. We want to discuss what is in a canonical subset for this tree. Everything in one, I'll give you a node. I'll tell you everything in this node, we'll call it a canonical subset. Why do we use such a pretentious terms? You'll see. More interestingly, I have points, and query is a window, as before, axis parallel rectangle, and I want to know who are all the points inside this axis parallel rectangle. Quad tree works very nicely in practice. Sure, KD3, R3, all nice in practice, but none of them gives me optimal query time. So I want to build such a tree. So what should I do? I will use only the x coordinate of the points. That is, I'll take all my points that live out here, and I'll project all of them on the x-axis. I'll project all my points on the x-axis. And that will give me the first tree that we'll see in this discussion. I will build the tree T, calligraphic T, on the projections of all the points on the x-axis. And now if you give me the query rectangles, I can find the log n trees that are relevant, the two log n trees that are subtrees that are relevant for me, and now start to check for each one, wise, are you inside the rectangle or not? But I know that I don't need to check the x. You already checked the x value between x1 and x2, or mu and mu prime. So you're definitely in range in terms of the x. I'm only checking points in these subtrees to ask if they are in the range of it or not. I cannot prove something about it, but it sounds like a good heuristic, right? Now for points in this subtree, remember this subtree on the x projection of the points, if I have a point that lives right here, I don't need to check its x coordinate because everybody in this subtree has x value between x1 and x2, mu and mu prime, the left and right part of my search path. So I only need to check if it also satisfies a y condition because it's a rectangle, it's not a strip that is my query. Okay. But I want to do better than this heuristic. So our next idea, and this whole data structure is called, confusingly enough, range tree. We have ranges in every tree, but this is called range tree. So here's the main tree, T. Remember this notation because I'll have a lot of other trees. T is a main tree. And here are all the points sorted by x. For every point, every node Ri in this subtree, or for every node Vi in this subtree, there is a bunch of points. The points that lives in P of Ri in the tree. That is, if I'll check all the points, here they are, they have a name. Since I call this node Ri, then it will be P for points sub Ri. What do I do next? Look at this subset of points, and build a tree for them, called Tri, named after this vertex. The vertex was Ri, so I'll call it T of Ri. What is this? It's a range tree. Who are the points in PRI? It's only the points in PRI, only these are the points that makes it into this tree. But in this tree, they are so, if I'm just looking at this triangle, it is a tree that contains all the points of PRI sorted by X. Now I'm building yet another tree for every node. That is look at all the points of PRY. Now I'll sort them based on by Y. Now I sort them by Y, and from my search tree, every to a sub forest with T as the main tree, and every node of this tree has a left child, right child, like every normal binary tree, has a value inside, but also have a pointer to yet another tree that contains a subset of it, sorted by Y. Let's see if I have a slide. So schematically, we'll go back to the slides before, but schematically, it will look like you have the main tree, T, and T of the root, T sub root, contains what? What is the set of nodes that the root correspond to? That's all the points of my data set. From the root of T, I have a pointer to yet another tree that contains all the points in my data set, sorted by Y. From the left subtree of the root of T, I have the left child, Y child, and a pointer to what? Subtree containing all the points over here, but sorted by Y. And I'm trying to convince you that this forest of trees pointing to trees all helps the search somehow. So let's go back one slide. So just to summarize, we prepare a binary search tree tau of V sorted by Y, and at each subtree, and this, in the book called it tau associated with V, by the way, just to using slightly different notation. And now to find all the points in search rectangle in the window, how do I tell you about the window? I'll tell you what is x and x prime, left boundary, right boundary, and what is y and y prime, orthogonal query. How do I answer this query? I'll go to the main tree, and I'll find node in the main tree in T, call them R1, R2, dot, 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 R2 log n. These are all the nodes in the main tree that I'll find that are what? These are the roots of subtrees that are good in terms of x. That is, I'm going to the main subtree, to the main tree, which contains all my points sorted by x, query in the main tree, thinking only about the x value. All they have are their x value. Do a search in the main subtree and find the three paths that we saw earlier. We call them pi2 and pi3. Find three paths. From these three points, again by x, and now you have a node along this path. You have along below the split P, along this path on your way to the right part of the x value. That would be this notation x and x prime. Here is a subtree. Normally I would know that all the points in this subtree are between x and x prime. They are in the infinite strip that we saw in this slide. It is everything between x and x prime. But in checking this subtree, I'm going to the other from V over here. I'm going to yet another subtree that contains, if this is S sub V, this subtree also contains S sub V, but sorted by Y. Right? Because what I'm sure about, all the points in this subtree in terms of X are in range. They are between X1 and X2. What I want to know is which one of them are also between Y1 and Y2. So check every such subtree if it's also in range of this Y. So what would be the overall search time? Scale of reporting, but how many subtrees do I actually need to see? I need to check in the main subtree log n roots of subtrees that are all in the range x, y's. And for each one of them, do another search that takes log n by itself. So the overall search time will be, help? Log square n. For every node or in the main trees that are in range, do another log n search in this subtree. Yeah.
I'm kind of having a hard time understanding why we are going through, for every node we find, building a new subtree. Why can't we just get all of the points in the infinite strip from x to prime, and then project, and then once we get all the points that are within that infinite subtree, or that infinite strip, just take those points and build another subtree in y, and then do it in 2 log n.
I think that I was confusing because I didn't explain exactly which part is a construction. Is a preprocessing, which part is a query. So preprocessing wise, take all the points, sort them by x. That would be T without subs. Take every node in T, look at all the points in it, build a subtree, T sub, if that's all this sorted by Y. Now you gave me the query value. I'm going to T, main T, find log n such subtrees. That is, I have the left branch and the right branch. Each one contributes log n, log to the base 2 of n, many subtrees that I need to check, at most to log n. And for each one, I'm fine in terms of x. Now in each such subtree, T r of I sorted by Y, I perform one search. And so did I answer your question, or you suggested something else?
Kind of. I think so. Can I draw something on the board?
Of course. Yes.
So like if I have this, I have these points here, and this is my query region. Why can't I find all the points between x and x prime? So that would contain like these points as well. And then once I found all of these points, build a new subtree only in y. And then if you're building the new subtree only in y, search between y and y prime so that I can filter these out. And then I can do it in d log n instead of log n.
Why? So we're in the game of, I should have said it, we're in the game of, you're going to surprise me with a lot of queries. For one query, I can do much better. I can do in linear time, actually. But there are going to be a lot of queries, and I don't know about them ahead of time. So I'm investing time in building efficient data structure so that the time per each query will be much faster. I don't know what is this window ahead of time.
I had the same question, but I figured it out because this algorithm, you only need to look at the root. You don't need to, that one you have to go through, sort it twice on the fly. Well, after you know the window, then you have to sort it. So, but this one you only go to the root. That's why you build the subtrees sorted by Y at each of the nodes. So you don't have to go down to the leaf.
And now, hopefully, this notion of canonical subset makes more sense, because a canonical subset is, from the first tree, is, well, it's a root of something, but it's also a set of points that all satisfies one area of my query. My query is orthogonal range query. I have the criteria about that. Every canonical subset that goes to the next level of the search conditions, criteria. And now I need from this canonical subset to filter out points that are not in the range. Right. I mean, of course, I can also say just look at the criteria by x, but it could be that the number of points that satisfies the x criteria is huge, and I want something that depends on the output and log n. If the number of points in this strip is much larger than log n, then just to scan all these points will take more than what I'm willing to invest, more than log square n, to be precise. What's the memory requirement? Yes, question? Oh.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question about memory, but if you're going to keep going, let's not stop there.
So naively, I have, how many subtrees do I have? I had the main tree, T. Every node of it was the root of yet another tree, so I have n trees, and each one can contain up to n points. So naively, n square is a bound on the memory. That's ugly.
But could we
for each one, I need to build its own subtree because being satisfies any criteria by X is completely orthogonal. Pan intended is completely independent of any criteria by Y. So the tree by X and the tree by Y are not recyclable. But there is only one tree by X and a lot of trees sorted by Y.
But this is not scalable. Like in 3D, it's probably too hard to do it in 3D.
There is a slide coming.
Oh,
So log square n as a memory requirement is too pessimistic. Somebody see a better argument? Here is one. That's my main tree. I don't know how to write calligraphic T. And that's my main T. And where do you see, here is one of the points, pi. Where do you see subtrees that stores pi? Of course, it's stored in T, obviously.
Is it all of its ancestors? All the ancestors of PI?
Look at the path that leads from pi all the way to the root. A node V here will have T sub V will contains pi. Why? Because it's an ancestor. Because when you look at all the nodes that V correspond to in T, descendant of T, pi is one of them. So I have to store pi in its own subtree. And so goes for the parent of V. It will also store. So does anybody see the punchline of the memory requirement? This camera stopped working, so I have to. So it's less than n squared. That's also pessimistic. So, yes, the height of this guy is log n. If I have 17 points in a subtree, I need to spend 17 units of memory. What is the memory requirement of this tree? For the whole structure. It's called the two-dimensional range tree. And for every P sub V, PV, remember, are the subset of nodes of here is V. Everybody in its subtree, that's P of V. So I want to know what is the total size of the subset P of V for every V in. Not hard.
n plus n over 2 plus.
It's not hard, but because
Because you have every node stored at least once, plus every time you go up.
every node participates in log n trees. Again, every point pi participates in only trees of its ancestors. Only in log n, if the height of the tree is log n, then every point is stored in log n trees. So the overall memory is n. Make sense? We have a slide coming that explains it. Right. So time analysis, well, the slides are not in the order I wanted. Time analysis for a query would be sigma of log n plus what you get from every vertex v. So the running time will be, as we said, log square of n plus, I don't double report, think about it. All these subtrees are disjoint enough so I don't need to double check twice. So for every subtree that I was in the range, in how many points do I need to print, plus the log square of 1 n's, one for the left, one for the right in the main subtree, and every one of it, their children, the children not on the path, you need to print. 2 log n might be too pessimistic. It might be so close to each other that you barely have subtrees at all, of course. It might be that the strip is so narrow, but that's an upper bound. And for each one of them, it will be log n, so log square n. If I just want to count points, to know how many points I have in a query rectangle, how much time? I don't want to know who these points are, just the number, yeah. Log square n. Same trick with the counters, but the counters sit on what? On the trees on the second level, the trees sorted by y. And then you are just summing up all these counters. You notice that no point is double counted for the same reasons, so it's log square n. So yeah, each point stored in order log n. That is in the tree of its self, P. And so on. So, and why is it data structure is not that practical? Because people would be annoyed about a bit more of computers are fast, parallelization, etc. People will get annoyed if you are saying instead of linear memory, 1 terabyte, I need n terabyte. So even though it's only log n, it might be a deal breaker. 3D. Now it's orthogonal range search in 3D. X, X prime, Y, Y prime, Z, Z prime. You build the first tree, the X projections of all the points. Every node in the main tree points to a subtree that contains this canonical subset, now sorted based on Y. And every node in this subtree points to its own subtree of all the points in the canonical subsets sorted by Z. So the running time will be log search in the main tree. For each node that you are getting, it would be log in this node in the second level. For each one, log in the third level. So that would be the search time. Log to the power of d plus k. In k. And unfortunately, if that's a search time that you want to have, just logarithmic search time, then the memory, do I have the memory on this slide? Sorry. what would be the memory? It would be n log square n. And unfortunately, if you want log cube n search time, or log square n, one log, there are tricks that can save you, but it's only one log. So if you want polylogarithmic search time, you need to spend in the memory that you allocate. You cannot get away with linear memory if you want a log or polylog, log to the power 3, we could just call it polylog. Search time, pick your poison. It's either space or search time. Cool. So back to the problems that we started with. We have the map. In the map, we have the window. Here is a way to find all the vertices that are in the window. So all the countries that have vertices, I now can answer. But I don't know to answer countries that don't have any vertices inside the window. My data structure works for points. So let's talk about segment tree, our next topic. So the problems that I really want to solve is I have a set of rectangles. Maybe they intersect, maybe not, I don't know. And I want to give you a query point, and you'll tell me who are the rectangles that contains my query point. Rectangle, axis aligned. So as the first building block to answer this type of query, giving a query point, who are the windows that contains my query point? As a pre-processing, let's solve the 1D problem. So I have a set of segments, rectangle in 1D, segments, and I want to pre-process them so that when you give me a query point on the x-axis, the segments here all have this y, the same elevation, y equals 0. They all have the same elevation, these are just for visualization, I guess, different height. Give me my query point, and I want to know who are the segments that contains my query point. And once again, I would like it as a collection of canonical subsets, because there might be more levels that I can do. Let me get back one slide. Sorry, I want to tell you something about where such orthogonal range we are going to. Here it's 3D, but I can give you also various criteria. I'll let you play with this a bit in the homework. Various criteria like but a weight or a color or something. And I just want to express it as intersection of simpler queries like only X, only Y. You can definitely push this part. Right. Makes sense? It doesn't need to be coordinate criteria. Any type of intersection between the range query is defined by intersection of various criteria that are orthogonal. Do this multi-dimensional search tree and it will work. So, sound a bit abstract. Okay, I have a set of segments. I want a data structure that actually is a bit overkilling for this problem, so that I'll give you a query point Q, and you'll tell me who are the segments that contains Q, again in log n plus k. So where is going to be? So just note the input are segments, and I'm going to generate intervals. And even though each one is just a set of points between x and x1, x2, in the data structure, they play different roles. So I look at all the segment S1, S2, S3, S4. I look at the endpoint of each segment. The endpoint of each segment. I'll throw in also minus infinity, and infinity, 14 in the case, as also virtual. Sort all of them. At this point, intervals. One such endpoint, I don't care if it's left endpoint or right endpoint, until the next endpoint. That's an elementary interval. Minus infinity until the very left endpoint of A2. The first interval, I1. I2 from this endpoint till the next one, sorted. I2, I3, all the way up to I9. Okay, these are elementary intervals. Notice elementary intervals are not the segments. Segments are part of the input. And the elementary interval is just from one endpoint to the next endpoint. And at some point, I would like every such elementary interval to know who are the segments that contains this interval. Right. Look at this interval I6 over here. I6 is inside S4 and inside S2 and inside S3. So somehow I'll want to store with I6 all these segments so that if I have a query point that lands in S6, that lands in I6, I can just tell you these are the segments that contains I6 because they contain the whole interval that contains I6 and my point is inside I6. But this will mean that I have a lot of intervals, and it's very easy to create an example that each interval needs half of the segments. So this will be in square memory. That's bad news. So let's try segment tree. Can you read it? Oh, sorry. Some animation to come. Okay. So I have my set of intervals, and I created the intervals, elementary intervals, because there are going to be more intervals that I'll create in a second. And remember, this whole data structure is a segment tree. And these intervals looks very similar to what we did in R trees. So I have all the elementary intervals, remember, from one endpoint until the next endpoint. One endpoint of one of the segments until the next point of any other segment. That will be an elementary interval. So I'll take the leftmost elementary interval and the one next to it, and I'll unify these two intervals. Sorry, I'll first build the tree, and the elementary intervals are just the leaves of this tree. Exactly what you'd expect to have. Look at all the elementary intervals. They nicely covered the whole x-axis. I want to build the binary search tree on these intervals in the obvious way. Takes the two leftmost one, unified them, that assigns this parent. This parent knows what is its own interval. W1 unified its two children, so it unified all the intervals from minus infinity all the way to here. Right, for all the way to the fourth. Unified, so that would be the interval of W1, this node over here, all the union of its children. The interval of W2 is everything over here, and W1 and W2 has a common parent, V. So the interval I sub V is just the union of these two intervals. So it goes all the way from the rightmost of the right interval, all the way to the leftmost of the left interval. And so on for this guy. And finally, this guy has its interval is just everything, the whole x-axis. That is, in every level, I covered all the whole x-axis. And now I can do a search that will lead me eventually to an elementary interval, and I would like this interval maybe to store all the segments that covered it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe it's a hint. So it looked fine on my monitor. But if every interval stores all the segments that covers it, I'm in troubles. I have way too many segments. So here is my solution, how I can limit the memory somehow. I'll say that a node mu stores a segment, and the node mu is not necessarily a leaf. It's any node of the tree. A node mu stores a segment Si if and only if the interval with mu is inside Si. That was already earlier. I said a elementary interval needs to store segments that covers completely this interval. So if I have a point inside the interval, then I also know what's the segment that covers it. So that was a condition that I have already, but I'm adding another condition. You are storing it only if your parent cannot bail you out. You'd always prefer to ask your parent to do the storage for you. But what is the condition? You'll store it only if your parent cannot, which means that a segment will be stored at a node mu only if the interval of mu is covered by S, but the interval of the parent of mu is not fully covered by S. There is some points of the interval of the parent not inside mu. And that somehow, in this way, we will bound how many nodes needs to store interval, and that will be our way out from the quadratic memory into something more reasonable. Good point. Thank you.
I didn't get the memory and you explain that one more time?
Happily. Take a point, pi.
Yeah.
It's stored in its own tree,
Right.
but its own tree has size constant. It's stored in its parent tree that has somehow larger memory. It's stored in its grandparent, and so on. But in how many trees does single node store?
I would rate them.
That
I would
just
rate them on a
ends.
scale of 1.
It's only log n many trees,
Yeah.
Right.
One being the hardest, or one
Oh, then you multiply. Okay.
and then I'm saying that was for pi, and then I'll just sum it up for all the pi. Yeah.